Hey guys, this is Chris from Ex Machina, and as I promised in my previous video, we are talking about the Ultramodern Bestiary. This was going to be called the Xeno Bestiary, but since we've added the fantasy creatures, it's just going to be called the Bestiary. This is not the cover, this is the inside cover. This barcode thing was in a little bit of effect. The actual cover we will show off later once we have it all finalized. I'm just going to delete this just so I can get a proper two-page spread. There we go. Contents haven't been completed yet because we are still working on this production. So we're going to go over this really quickly. I'm going to showcase what we're going to be doing. I'm hoping you guys can hear me. Turns out my gain was really low for the previous video, and I do apologize. For the fit for this video is the Canadian Colonial Marine Corps. This is a completely unique little t-shirt. Oh, not unique, but it's done by my brother in Vancouver that is running Tyrius Cosplay. So a nice little play off of the United States or United Systems Colonial Marine Corps. This is the Canadian Colonial Marine Corps. So with that out of the way, this is the Bestiary. It is an insane 452 pages. It was going to be around 300, close to 400, and then we decided to add in all the fantasy creatures as well. This has every single monster. Oh, actually, about say 99% of all the monsters that we've ever created for anything that Ex Machina has ever made, plus a whole bunch more. We've tweaked a whole bunch of monsters. I'd say about 50% of them have been tweaked, and a bunch of new ones obviously have been created as well, using either artwork we previously had or new artwork that we commissioned, although not very many. It's primarily just for one specific class of monster that I wanted illustrations for. So I'm going to go over this really, really quickly. This is going to get released hopefully soon. Like I said, all we're waiting for are these three images from Nick Greenwood. Once that's done, it's going to get released. So I'm really hoping it comes out in May. This first section just dealing with the introductions. We're going very, very quickly into some of the new rules we play with. We are going to be offering much larger creatures, and so I felt that the standard size categories topping out at Gargantuan just didn't fit the bill, so we added a bunch more. This is carried over from Ultramodern. Anything that's required from Ultramodern in here, so if you don't have Ultramodern, you just want the monsters, you don't need Ultramodern 5 or any other previous Ex Machina book. You only need this. To get to the point where we may even remove the Ultramodern logo from the front cover. Are still kind of up in the air. So anyway, you don't need to have Ultramodern 5 to run with these monsters. We have rules regarding mechs and then firearm rules. These are some new additions that we've added so that a GM can play with these firearm rules if he or she wishes, or they wish. First chapter, we organize these in monsters. I do not organize them alphabetically like the new Monster Manual 2024 does. I do clump them into sections, and then I'm going to have a pretty good index and a pretty large contents page as well. The adversaries are pulled over from Ultramodern, except we've added a bunch more. As you can see here, there's a whole bunch more here. And then we've added weapon properties so you can play around and tweak. The whole point of adversaries is that they're completely generic human enemies that you can play with, either large templates that can either change their species, or you can play with their weapons, which will change their time period, from flintlock to gyro to nuclear weapons and so forth. And then you'll notice here right off the bat that the monsters are presented in the format of the Monster Manual from 2024. Whether you love it or you dislike the 2024 rules, I kind of like the way they are presented, and that is having the mod and the saving throw right next instead of having the saving throws across the bottom. I like this format a lot. I like the fact that initiative is now here. I like the fact that the proficiency bonus has been added in finally under the challenge rating. The only thing I disagree with is in the Monster Manual, they clump all resistances, whether it be condition or immunities, whether it be conditions or damage immunities, under one entry. I keep them separate for clarity's sakes. So most of these monsters are carried over from the various books that have had adversaries, namely I think Threshold has, Affinity, and Ultramodern, but we've added a bunch more. I wanted to make sure that every challenge rating had at least 2 to 3 monsters, some have 4. And once again, all these illustrations are carried over from all previous Amethyst stuff. We've tweaked a few. For example, the Affinity illustrations don't have their splotchy paint scheme around them anymore, and the color's been shifted slightly. So we'll go through very, very quickly, because once again, these are ranked. These are all basically just generic monsters, although once again, we've added a whole bunch more. 2 or 3 per challenge rating. Like, for example, we've got our kind of John Wick type, and he is a very powerful challenge rating 12 creature because it's John Wick. There's a lot of interpretation and monsters inspired by IP, so you'll be seeing that quite a bit. Sometimes it's much more obvious than others. So we'll go through this real quickly. There's like that is one monster, which is a Grandmaster Kung Fu type, and that gets us through all of this, the big boss being the challenge rating 20. And then we get to aliens. Aliens has been clumped into basically involve anything that's not like a pan-dimensional or a paranormal thing. These are truly aliens. There is another section for kind of outsiders. I know that really is kind of fuzzy, but I wanted to separate these 2 chapters because they were getting quite big. And Descendants are from Ultramodern, but I've added in the Anathema, these creatures that from Amethyst Factions. Even though they could be in the fantasy section, I pulled them into this section because I wanted to have that cosmic horror aspect, because these are cosmic horror creatures, and there's the Undescended himself. Blights were a monster introduced in Threshold. They previously didn't have illustrations. They will now. These are the illustrations I'm waiting for. These are obviously inspired by Dead Space. I have monster representations of over almost every single type of monster in that from that game series. As you can see, there's quite a few. We only have 3 illustrations coming down, so I had to pick my battles for which ones. Angelons are from Affinity. We've added base Angelon monster plus their mechs. Evolution are aliens from Ultramodern 5. I haven't added any more of those, but this is an illustration from Threshold I like so much I gave it a 2-page spread. And then the Gnosis. Chitin is a playable race from Ultramodern, so we've added monster entries for those 2. Kono, same thing. They're a playable race. We've added monsters for them. Scabs are a playable race and a monster from Affinity, so they're here. Scrim, playable race from Affinity. Now we've added monster entries for them, including their power armor. The Shells are the mechanized kind of zombie-like creatures from the Invasion Proxy module. This was a module that was in the first Ultramodern 4, Ultramodern 5, and then it got released as a separate adventure. This is the first time we're seeing color images from that series. Wonderful things. These kind of automatic color things. So we played around with the color. Didn't work a lot, but we had some fun with colorizing these images. This image has been colored for years. And so some of these images you're seeing new are brand new colorized versions of the original black and white images that we've seen. We've actually added a new creature. There's 2 skinners instead of 1. There are these other classic creatures from that, classic from the series. The Screamer, and the Tripod doesn't have an illustration, so we kind of threw that one in there. Xenobites are alien-esque creatures that were introduced in Ultramodern 5. Once again, we have all of those guys. And that moves us into a mech chapter. This chapter is very big. It involves every type of mech, from fantasy mechs, steam-powered mechs, to larger ones. We'll get into all of them here. Avatars introduced in Paradise and Affinity. They're mechs in only the loosest interpretation, because they basically project force fields. So we have all of them here. We've added a new one, actually. The Lumen Colossus is new. And then we have general power suits. These are smaller. These are not really mechs, but they're basically more like power suits. And these are almost all of these are from either Affinity Conestoga or they're from Amethyst Revelation. So we have a lot of stuff here. That's the Saint. That's an old mech design from Ultramodern. And as you can see how we switch in multiple Revelations, Conestoga, Factions, Ultramodern, Affinity, Ultramodern. And this is a great image. I love it. Nick's original design was awesome, and his colorized version of this was amazing. That's from Ultramodern. Actually, that technically is from Necropolis, if you go back long enough. That was back from what we were designing, and I wanted all of the robots to kind of have exposed synthetic muscles, and that's why the Neurospastic design, all the robots kind of had that. The mechs from Conestoga were very much inspired by Anthem. So that's Prowler. That is from Conestoga, that's from Ultramodern, that's from Ultramodern, that's from Conestoga, and you can see some of these are newer color versions of these old illustrations. That's a new color image. That is, not all illustrations are Nick Greenwood, some are Memphis Wong. That's a Memphis Wong illustration. And then we also have illustrations. Some of these are actually probably from another artist whose name escapes me at the moment. And so you'll be switching a lot of artists. We go from Nick to Memphis and so forth. We've skipped past. Yeah, we go. Steam suit. These are the steam-powered mechs. So here we are, all of those guys. And then we have the Titans. Titans are gigantic. Alpha Geist is a new one based off this illustration. So this is an example of some of the crazy stuff these guys will do. They have some unique roles. They can activate several times during an initiative order. So when we have really large creatures, there are two things. Either we give them a lot of legendary actions, or we give them multiple rounds in a turn. We did this in Amethyst Revelations, and they're coming back to do that here. Here are the illustrations from Revelations again. There's an illustration from Ultramodern. So we go through them. Once again, these are mostly huge. Obviously, the Alpha Geist is a lot larger. You know, it's almost to the point where you know perfectly well this is not a monster that you're likely going to be fighting. But whatever, it is what it is. Jormungandr. This background is actually from Amethyst Revelation, but I wanted this monster image was too big, and since he's a standalone image without a background, it didn't fit with him, so I basically threw him against a background. Panzer Paluda from Amethyst Revelations. This is a newer, kind of it's the same monster. No, I think it's actually a new monster using an old illustration. Tiamat. The Vertical Tank, which is a very classic image, has been around for 10-15 years. We get to the section for outsiders. So these are basically things that aren't really mechs, and they're not really aliens. They're borderline fantasy. But, so we have the Abomination here. The Deep Lurker and the Deep Ones, which are, once again, Cthulhu, but not specifically tied to an alien menace like the Antecedents are. So we have a bunch of, so these are the Deep Ones. The Dwellers are all the underground and subterranean creatures. I call them genetically reconstructed invasive mutants, or Grims. Obviously, this is a play off of Chuds. If you're as old as I am, you may remember what that is. So we have Chuds in here. Gargantuix, which is carried over from Ultramodern. This, once again, is our kind of Godzilla. I was going to add more. We just kind of ran out of time, but I was going to add like 4 or 5. I was going to add, because he's kind of our Godzilla entry. I had a couple for, like, that were kind of Mothra inspired, but at the end of the day, they're kind of just dragons. These Infected are played off of, they were part of my zombie adventure, which was, once again, part of Ultramodern. These are obviously heavily inspired from Left 4 Dead, so it's Plotter Brute, Dog Drone, Glutton Guard. I think I added a few more. The Morphophage is the creature from The Thing. The entry here, the illustration, is actually from the Morpher race. And the Morpher race wasn't supposed to be kind of like The Thing, but Nick's illustration was so disturbing, I couldn't help but use it for the Thing creature. So we have 3. Fragment, Spawn, 4. Core, and the Prime. Patchworks are kind of the assembled people. Not really golems, but definitely the Frankenstein's monster type stuff. So we have Patch Crawler, Servant's Griever, Plaguewalkie, which was most of this stuff is inspired from Taurus. And then we have the Abomination of Many, which is a big one. The Sand Sifters are all the sand creatures from, and technically this could go in fantasy, but I have them in their own section just in case you're not running a fantasy game. These are all sand-based monsters. This is all pulled from Amethyst Revelation, so we have all of those. Shapeless Wild, which is a classic monster. That technically should go in fantasy, but once again, I kept it in this one. The skins from Ultramodern. I just recently added these over. So we have all of there's a few more in this section. And so we have all the skin monsters here. Superheroes, this is a new section. So these are not monsters carried over from Apex. These are all brand new creatures based off of specific superpowers. So even though they are presented as generic monsters, obviously these are individually named monsters. So Elastro, Phosburn, Gamble. You can basically guess who these are. Invisible Sentinel, Rend, Fang. Paragon is our big superpower one. Rockhide, Shadow Step, Titan, Velocus, and Zenith. And then Thinner, which is a monster that's carried over from Affinity. Virus is the main opponent for Affinity, so we included them as well. And we get into robots. So obviously not mecha, these are robots. And these are all over the map. We have alien ones, and then we get into there's a whole bunch of them. This is from Affinity, and Max is from Amethyst. These are from Amethyst factions. Steampunk Automaton and the Watchers from Affinity. Automata is from Amethyst Revelations, so we have a bunch of those guys. The cyberpunk monsters are all basically from Neurospasta, so we have a bunch of new colorized versions of those classic monsters from Neurospasta. Some are from Ultramodern, but some of these are from Neurospasta. There has been a thought, now that I have all these color illustrations from Neurospasta, to re-release Neurospasta and update it. If you think that's a good idea, let me know. Maybe I'll do it. There's been so many cyberpunk games, though, so there's a part of me that thinks that it'll be redundant by this point. So a lot of cyberpunk stuff here, and the colorization kind of goes all over the map. Sometimes we have a comic book style, then it shifts over to this one. So that's a choice. So once again, all stuff from cyberpunk stuff here. Vortex, Flightbot, and Wraith, and then we get into the fantasy robots. These are mostly from Affinity. The Animex, a bunch of those, and yeah, a bunch of those actually. And then we get to the Excubadors, and Kingdom Guard, and the Mechanites, which are from Amethyst Revelations. Sentinels are which are from Affinity. Tananem is from Amethyst Revelations. And then we get into vehicles. I was tempted whether or not I was going to have a vehicle section, but I decided to. I gotta check that image. It looks very low res. But these guys were originally going to have the multi-initiative rules from mechs. I decided not to, and I switched back to them for using legendary actions. Oh, that's a mistake. You can see that there's a double image there. I gotta fix that. The reason why is that the background is part of one ship, and then the ship is duplicated, and that was just an artistic choice, but obviously there's a mistake there I gotta fix. These are scattered from either Amethyst Revelations or from Amethyst Factions. Capital Ship. City Ship is from Revelations. Cloud Runner is from, I think, Taurus, which is part of Affinity. And as you can see here, for these guys, they have very interesting uses of how they're doing legendary actions. If you go to something like the City Ship, which is, once again, an impossible creature. You're not fighting this thing. It has 10 legendary actions, and each one can make 3 railgun turrets. You can reduce that by trying to take out these turrets, and there's rules on how to take out a turret. If a city ship suffers a critical hit, or it's been reduced by 50 hit points, there's a 10 or 25% chance one of these turrets is going to get removed. When you do that, you reduce the number of legendary actions by 1. And once it's done to 0, you've destroyed all the turrets. A lot of them have that. The Cloud Runner has that. Sometimes it's only 2 actions because the ship is smaller. Sometimes it's normal. It's 3, like the dirigible here. I got a fan jet, the Hammerhead. These are for Amethyst. Got some helicopters, hover cruiser. This is another background that I slapped this image in front of because I thought it was cool looking. The hover cruiser, once again, very, very large, very powerful, has a lot of rules. 5, legendary actions. The repulsors from Amethyst, that's from Revelations. Sky Seers are from Revelations. Straightens from Revelations. Ground vehicles are brand new. They're when I say some of these are from something, like the hover cruiser never had monster stats. Most of these are just vehicle stats, and so now they have monster stats. Obviously, there's some rules about who's the actual monster. Is it the vehicle or is it the person inside? And the rule is, of course, as long as that person's inside the vehicle and you're not inside that vehicle, you're fighting the vehicle, not the person inside. And there are some rules about trying to get through its defenses. So we have various cars, and then we have some trucks, some land trains from Amethyst, the Mobas, which is from Revelations, some generic bikes, including these ones which are from Amethyst, new truck spinner, and then we have some basic trucks. That one's from Amethyst. And then we get into fantasy. Now, normally this book was supposed to end right about here, 330 pages, but I asked whether or not we should add in all the fantasy monsters. And the consensus off of Discord was, yeah, go ahead and do that. So here are all the friggin' monsters, which is going to be another 150 pages. Some of these are races that now we have monster entries for. The Ani from Amethyst. Bladder, Bogs are from Amethyst. Obviously, these are almost all from Amethyst. There's only a handful that are from Affinity Paradise. Bog Mother, Chaperons. So these are the first time, if you're playing Amethyst, these are the first time you're seeing monster entries for Chaperons. And they're also named and inspired by the backgrounds and life paths and prestige classes, or prestige paths you can pick. So the Warden, Chrysalis are actual paths you can take. The Blazesinger, less so. Jagoth, Citadel, Nidar, those are from Paradise. Damascens, once again, we have anywhere from 2 to 3 per species entry. Scholar, Sentinel, and Academic, these are all characters that you can play if you were playing Amethyst. And then here we have the Gargantuan Dragon section. These are carried over. Some of these monsters have been tweaked a little bit. They've been updated. So obviously we have all the Holy Dragons, the Noble Dragons, the Guardian Dragons, and then we switch to TIE Fox. This is the first time all the dragons from Amethyst have been put into one book. Cancer, Death, Fallen, and then after that we've got the Elemental Dragons introduced in Revelations, and then we have the Asian Dragons, and then that's it for dragons. Drifter and Gaunt are from Affinity. Gebermak is from Revelations. The Gulath, which are the vampires of the setting, we have a bunch of them. Gimfin, we've got 3 of those. Grim Gods, Gipsangi from Amethyst. Kodiak from Amethyst. No, sorry, Gipsangi are from Affinity. We have the monsters from Kodiak, the Bear People. Kythic, Soldinians, so we have 3 of those. The Narisa, which are from Amethyst. Naros, 3 of those. So these are, once again, these are all types of classes you can pick with abilities that are inspired by your character abilities. Ograk, Pegasus. I don't know if I added more Pegasus. No, I did. I added a Pegasus Warlord. Panabrate are from Affinity. Picadilly from Affinity. Pug and Roche. Rogue, Runero. Runero were in the Sea Elves introduced in Revelations. Shamyaza. Skeg. Striders, which are from Affinity, and then Thornshroud. And then Tylan Vectors are from Affinity. Vispids, we have 3 of those guys. Volars, we have 3 of those. And the Watchers, which are these giant monsters from Paradise. And I think that's it. Yep, that's it. So that's it. 400. We have, like, once again, that doesn't include the index or the contents page. So like 453 with the index, 450 pages or so. And that's it. That's hopefully coming out in the next few weeks. If you have any suggestions of things you want to add, let me know. We haven't locked down the index yet, so we could always add more. But obviously we pulled every illustration we could. We took the black and whites and we colored them best we could. So there's been a lot of work put into this. This is supposed to come out like last year, and the additional work required, because we were originally going to put just the black and white images in there, but they were so jarring. I wanted them colored, so that's something we did. And but yeah, there we go. There's 444 monsters last count, so that's a lot. So I'm hoping we'll get this thing out sometime later this month. Anyway, that was it. That's all I wanted to show you guys. This has been Chris from Deus Ex Machina.